up in a Connex, and we had to sign for them if we needed them. Well, at one time I needed my rifle for guard duty. It was gone. Somebody stole the thing. I thought this is a...
All right, good morning. We're here at the Lenore Woods Senior Center in Columbia, Missouri on Memorial Day. So May 30th, 2016. Have Brandon Bedeau as the interviewer, Carl Neitzert as the logger and camera operator, and Larry Buskin is our veteran today. Thanks for being with us, Larry.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I asked you a few questions here, and again, feel free to elaborate on whichever topic you choose.
And spent my first few years of school in a 2-room schoolhouse up in North St. Louis County, and all my relatives, my uncles and aunts, went to school with me. We all were in the same schoolhouse at one time. So, it was kind of a family event to go to school.
Yeah.
And then after that, I had to go to a regular grade school because it was getting too many class grades up. But after high school, I did a little work driving a truck, and then I worked construction. And I happened to see in the paper one day, I thought, well, there's got to be a better future than this. There was a company called Western Electric that was hiring out of the St. Louis Globe Democrat building in St. Louis. You ask anybody, who's Western Electric? Nobody had any clue who they were. I went down and I thought, we're in a crisis time when all my friends were getting drafted and everything. I thought, well, I think I'll just go down and enlist and do what I want to do, not what the government wants me to do, So I enlisted and spent 3 years in the military then.
Okay.
As my MOS was prop and rotor on Chinooks, CH-47s. So what they do, they put me in the Huey outfit as usual.
All right. So when did you enlist?
September of '66.
And you said a lot of your friends were drafted.
Yes.
But you wanted to take...
I wanted to do something that I could use after I get out. I mean, there's not too much call for infantry or artillery or tank drivers as some of these people wanted to do. I says, well, I want to do something. I've always been interested in aircraft, so I thought, well, I'll try something with helicopters.
Let's talk about your early days of service and training. So where did you go?
Well, after you enlist downtown St. Louis at wonderful Spruce Street, they loaded us all on buses and took us to wonderful Fort Leonard. And I spent the full basic there, and it was you always heard the story that don't ever volunteer for anything. Well, one day the drill sergeant came out and says, I need some volunteers as truck drivers. And of course, everybody around you said, don't you do that. Don't you do that. You're going to push a wheelbarrow the rest of the time you're here. So I said, I drove a truck when I was a civilian, so I just raised my hand. And that's all I did in basic. I drove the truck. I didn't have to go out there and crawl around the mud with the guys on bivouac and stuff. I drove all the supplies out to them, which I think, well, that was great, It does pay to volunteer sometimes, I guess. But my drill sergeant was a cool guy. He was a black guy and really mean to everybody, but him and I got along great. And he helped me out. I had to go check out I think it was a 66 Chevy pickup one time and drive stuff out there. And he's with me. And this deer comes flying out of the woods and fell on top of the truck, tore the fender off the thing, and this guy jumps out. He's got a big Bowie knife, jumps out, jumps in the ditch after this deer. He wants to get that deer, and he's down there fighting with that deer in the ditch. But the deer won and got away. And then they tried to make me pay for the truck, and he stood up and came in there and battled with him about the fact that he was there. I wasn't at fault for wrecking that truck. It was the deer. So I appreciate that. But then when I was supposed to go to AIT, my school wasn't scheduled correctly. So they made me stay another tour of basic. But I didn't have to do anything but drive a truck around and stuff. I didn't have to, really go through basic class again. So I spent 2 tours basically in basic.
Oh, wow.
And then after that, they sent me to Fort. The old story is it's Fort Virginia, but everybody called it Fort Useless, Virginia, for my AIT. And they put me on a train down there right there near Fort Leonard, some little town down there. No, it was some little town, Newburgh.
Newburgh, yeah.
And sent me all the way to St. Louis. I was supposed to catch another train the next day to go to Virginia, but I called the family and had them come and get me, and so I spent the night at home, and then I caught the train the next day, and it was a long ride on a train all the way across half of the country in a seat that don't recline, basically, because they really give you the best they can afford.
Was it a civilian train?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when I got to Fort Eustis, we immediately started our training on prop and rotor and stuff like that. But I enjoyed it, being there and everything. I'd never been to the East Coast. I got to see a lot over there. Every weekend, I went up to Washington, D.C., and then I caught a plane out of Washington, Baltimore, and headed for St. Louis every weekend. Time I landed and come pick me up in the middle of the morning like that. And then I'd fly back Sunday night,
So you mentioned your mom would come pick you up at the airport.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your parents. And
Well, my mother grew up on a farm too in Florissant, and I think she was 16 when she got married to him, and he was a veteran in World War II. I think the 13th Armored Division he was in. He would never talk about it. We asked him things about it, but I did manage to get I guess a battalion book they had. When he passed away, I got a lot of this stuff, and they were all over Europe and things, and I think he drove a deuce and a half and stuff while he was there. And he always made fun of everybody, about the fact that he's got girlfriends everywhere, wherever they were at, Europe, France, Germany, or whatever. Nobody ever believed him, but I think he was not lying about any of it. He was a farmer. Then he worked in construction for his later years. He also worked at a company called Daybright Lighting and got acid burns on his legs and stuff, But my mother, she was basically a homemaker. She never left the home to work until her later years too. But I got 3 brothers and 1 sister, and one of my youngest brother passed away 2 years ago, and my sister and I don't communicate, but my other brother and I do. We just got back together after 20-something years of everybody fighting over an estate and everything. And so I go to air shows with him all day. He participates a lot in RC aircraft and helicopters and stuff, so I used to try to do that, but I can't do that no more since I have no mobility in my fingers and things. So I just go and watch what they're doing and help him out if he needs help. But I feel bad the fact we lost 20-something years, and I lost the brother I never really got to communicate with for 20-something years. It's nice to see him again, though. But my mother's a wonderful lady, and they both have passed away very young. I think my mother passed away when she was 61, and my father when he was 65. And
is young. So it sounded like you had a good experience in basic training.
well, I think it was enjoyable. Sure, you have all the running and stuff. In basic training, after I left basic training, I was in the best shape. I mean, feel strong, healthy, and everything. And after that, it goes downhill. And after I got my AIT, they sent us to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I love Oklahoma. It's a wonderful state. I love being out in that type area and everything. But it was very disappointing in the fact, here you think you had training, and you go to Oklahoma to the airfield to work, and you don't get to touch nothing because they have civilians doing all the work. What they made us do was go get lost. Just sign out and go out to the park and have a good time. Every day we did this. And then if they needed somebody, we would cut grass for the airfield. And that was it. And I even went through a lawnmower training class on how to cut with a lawnmower.
Just in your spare time, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of a letdown knowing that you want to do this stuff, work on helicopters, and they turn right around and have civilians doing it.
Wow, that's interesting.
And I spent a year and a half there. So I volunteered, and they finally took me.
And did you leave immediately, or?
No, it was about a month later. Okay. It took them a little while to decide if I was worth going, I guess.
Do you remember arriving and what that was like?
Well, the trip there was really exhausting. I went back to St. Louis, and my orders said to catch a plane to Oakland. So I got at Oakland, and then you went into a reception center. And that was quite a treat to see that. I mean, you go into a warehouse, and people probably won't believe it, but they had rows and rows of commodes and urinals. It's like in a warehouse, and then you get to sleep over there and stuff. And nobody wanted to be there, so they get you out as fast as they can. I think I spent about a week there, and then they shipped us. I remember flying into Japan. No, Hawaii was first. And they let us off the plane in Hawaii for just 2 hours. So what are you going to do in 2 hours? I wander around the airport. And then I think we went straight to Japan for some fuel or something. And I was quite surprised to see Japan had mountains with snow on it. And since then, I've learned Japan has the same climate and type terrain as what we have here in Missouri in the United States. But it looked pretty from the air. I'd like to go there someday, I guess. But then we headed on over, and I arrived in Bend like everybody else. Then they throw you on a chopper and send you someplace. Well, I got sent about 35 miles northeast, I think it was, called Phuoc, Vinh. Phuoc, I think it's spelled. It used to be a Japanese airfield in World War II. Then the French were in there and took it over. And a lot of the buildings were left over from the French, but it was like a little basic airfield, and that was it, And they assigned me to the 407th Detachment, which was attached to the 162nd Aviation, assault group. Helicopter assault group. And we only had about 6 people at one time because of the rotation and everything. I think it was supposed to have like 20-something people doing everything, but due to people leaving and coming and going, we ended up one time, we only had 6 people, so we had to double up on everything we did. I was prop and rotor, but I also helped with the engines and sheet metal and everything else. And everybody helped each other.
You didn't see any combat?
Well, we got shelled all the time with mortars and rockets. That was about it. They didn't have any artillery around us. We had the artillery, but they never shot at us that I know of. Now on the other side of the airfield, the Air Force said they were being shot at quite a bit, but they were always trying to walk them in for us and get it scoped out on where to put the mortars quite loud. And the rockets, you don't even hear until they hit, but you can hear them walking those mortars in. And I got caught a couple times in the shower, of course. When those come in, you got to make a run for it. And what do? You dive in the bunker and you get all the mud and all over you, everything again. But we had a few guys got hit and killed by the rockets and things. But that's life.
So you did have a few casualties in yours.
And I couldn't have done combat if I wanted to. They couldn't find my rifle. We had to lock all our rifles up in a connex, and we had to sign for them if we needed them. Well, at one time I needed my rifle for guard duty. It was gone. Somebody stole the thing. I thought this is a hell of a way to do a war. You can't even have a rifle in a war zone. It's just ridiculous stuff goes on. People don't know about it.
Yeah, you don't see missing rifles in the movies, do you?
No,
you need them.
And locking them up so you can't get them.
Right. Were you a prisoner of war?
No.
Okay. Other very memorable experiences? Your time overseas?
Well, it used to be whenever they started shelling us, they would send up a couple of assault choppers to try to find them and blow them out of the ground and stuff. Well, that one night, it wasn't much after I got there, about a month and a half I was there, they started shelling. They sent up a chopper gunship, and artillery was shooting at the same time. Well, they blew him out of the sky. These guys, I remember all 4 guys were supposed to be going home within a month and just blew them right out of the sky. And when they went to go get the stuff the next morning, all they came back was a 3/4-ton pickup with a bunch of little junk in the back. I don't even know if they found the bodies or anything, but just blew them out of the sky. So then they decided, this is not a good thing. Let's don't do this no more.
Awarded any medals or citations?
Well, and just the normal little rifle insignia things in basic and stuff like that. And an honorable discharge, of course.
How'd you stay in touch with family?
The only way you could is write letters and hope they send you a care package of food.
And did they?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
My mother always sent me stuff.
It sounds like she would have, yeah.
But we had guys that knew how to take the rations and make pizza out of them and other things. I mean, we ate good with all that. I think it was K rations, and C rations were World War II. And some of our stuff was left over from the Korean War. It was still tasty. Yeah.
Other than the rifles being locked up, you felt like you had plenty of supplies?
Oh, yeah. So I was in charge of the prop and rotor shop, and you have to rebuild these things and, the rotor heads and all that. I was always able to get the supplies we needed to work on the things. Tools were a different matter. A lot of times they didn't want to get you the tools. But as far as the repair parts and stuff, we had plenty of that. We could always get it. The only thing that was kind of bad was they have different echelons of maintenance. A detachment is only supposed to do a certain level of maintenance on things. Then you go to the company level and on up. And we weren't allowed to do very much as a detachment. But that didn't work out. We do whatever we could to keep them going. So whenever inspections came about from higher up, battalions or whatever, we would load all our stuff that we weren't supposed to have on flatbed tractor trailers and ship them over to the Air Force side on the other side of the field and just park them over there until the inspection was over, and then we'd bring them all back. Otherwise, we'd be in trouble for having this stuff. But somebody had to fix them. You can't just say, well, we're going to send this over to Midas or something and have them do it. We got to do it.
Absolutely. So you got under some pressure there. Do you remember any other feeling other stress or pressure in your time there?
Just the fact that you kind of miss being home on the holidays and things like that. But otherwise, you were kept so busy, you just didn't even realize time traveled pretty fast.
You know, it's different. You think about recreation or things that soldiers would do for good luck and things like that. What'd you do for recreation, and did you have any?
Well, I was an enlisted personnel, so we go to enlisted club quite a bit, drink beer. But after that, I made NCO, so I could go to the NCO club and drink hard liquor. And they got me started on a bad habit of vodka and ginger ale back then. And I think that's what damn near killed me this past year. I was drinking too much of it. You know, you start out, I wanted to have a couple. I had a lot of stress all the time, so I only want to have a cocktail after dinner or something. Next thing you know, I'm more of it. And so it gets to you after a while and you don't realize it. So I quit all that now. I drink a beer now and then, but I don't drink any hard stuff at all. And I blame them for getting me started on it. But that was our only entertainment except sitting around and talking and playing cards and things like that.
Right.
We were never allowed to go out off base.
Really?
They would never allow us to go off base. But they would allow the local people to come on base. So.
Interesting. Any practical jokes or anything humorous that you remember?
I have to think about that. I know as soon as I don't leave, I'll think of something, you know?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what stupid things were done.
You always hear of pranks and different things, right? So
I can't recall any off the top of my head right now. But if I pop in there, just bring it up.
if you think of something. How about photographs? Do you take any pictures while you're there, or?
I forgot to bring any of those. Yeah, I took a lot of pictures of us, you know, working and stuff like that. And my job, anybody that worked on these things, Hueys, they had to go up with the warrant officer for test flight. That way they said, if you screw up, you're going to pay for it too. You know? So I got a lot of photos of flying over Vietnam, which is a very pretty country. And it's beautiful. And a lot of photos of buildings and stuff, the old French style buildings, and a lot of our facilities and things. When I got there in Phuoc, Vinh, all it was an old shack that we worked in, just open doors, and that was it. You know, like an old hut that we worked in. And you had to bring in a whole set of blades, rotor blades and all that, and work on them in this with a few little bulbs of light, and that's it. Partway through, the engineers decided they want to build us a hangar. So they built this beautiful hangar out there, asphalted, everything like, you know, and then they put concrete out in front of it. We were supposed to stand out there in formation every day. Now, we're on like a side of a hill. It goes down into the airfield and then up on the other side. And they were all sitting up there watching all this stuff, the enemy was. And so when we weren't in formation, they would shoot mortars over there and rockets and just keep feeling out where we were standing. You could see every day where they were hitting was getting closer to where we were supposed to stand. So finally they decided this wasn't a good idea either. But they did hit the hangar numerous times, and that thing was riddled with holes by the time we left there. I mean, beautiful place. They just tore the hell out. And we're glad most of us, we pushed choppers outside and worked on them outside because we felt like it'd be better chance of surviving if they start shooting at us again than sitting in that hangar with metal coming down on you.
You mentioned you had in basic training, the officer helped you out, things like that. How about in Vietnam? Do you have some fellow soldiers or officers that you were friends with or close? Or
all our officers in Vietnam were cool people. A lot of them were all warrant officers. And of course, you always had a first sergeant who was cool too. You know, a sergeant major, things like that. These guys been around a long time. They knew what was going on. They knew how to treat people.
That's good.
So, and we lost one. When I left, I got a letter a few weeks later that the captain we had in charge of our group was killed in an attack, you know, a mortar attack. You hate to see things like that. We did have a few of our guys got hit with rockets. And the sad part is I can't remember any of the names. I got pictures and I can remember some of these people, but I don't know any names. And I tried to keep in touch with one or two of them after I got back. And I finally detected that they really didn't want to talk about anything. So I just never communicated with them anymore. And I can understand why, some affects people differently. And so you don't want to intrude on their privacy. And halfway through my tour, they decided they didn't want us in Phuoc no more. So they moved us down through Saigon. We all got into a big convoy, and I got to drive the deuce and a half loaded with supplies and stuff down to the Mekong Delta at a place called Dong Tam. I don't know how to spell that. It's about 30-something miles south of Saigon. And they had built us a new base down there, and the riverboats were down there too, the Navy riverboats and stuff. And they built us nice hooches to live in and everything. But I didn't stay there but like 6 months, and then they shipped me home. But it was nice taking a convoy all through that territory, through Saigon. I would have never got to see Saigon the way I did unless we drove through it like that. And there was a funny instance. You're going down all these rock roads, dust flying up, like being in the country here, flying up, and we're doing 30, 40 miles an hour following each other, and one guy hits the brakes. So what do you got? You got everybody else running into him. There must have been a dozen deuce and a halves hitting each other. And the truck that I had, I hit, and there was a trailer behind me, and it just jackknifed up and then fell back down. But you couldn't see with all that dust.
Where were you guys headed to? Okay, that's where you were going. All right. And what years was this? You said 3 years of service in all, but how long were you in Vietnam? 68, 69.
Yes.
All right. And once you got to the town, what were some experiences from that?
Dong Tam?
Or that location?
It basically was all about the same. We had a better working environment because they had better facilities for us. But it was interesting. We got to go down to the docks and look at the riverboats and stuff that went up and down the river fighting them. They were different. I can't swim, so I thought, well, that's nice. Let them guys do that stuff.
Right. Other stories from 68 and 69 that you wanted to mention as well?
Well, you know how, I don't know if you know, but I have the idea that from things that happened in the past, but a lot of them did, and they were nuts. I will say that. Some of these guys are just plain crazy. And they weren't infantry. They were crazy. We had one young man from Hawaii, and he was loonier than you could ever imagine. I mean, he was crazy as hell. But he was always on dope all the time. And it seemed like nobody could do anything to these people to stop them. So you just left them to themselves, let them do what they want. And we didn't have too much communications. All that rioting and protesting that was going on, we didn't know half of what all that was all about. Because we were so busy doing our jobs, we never paid attention what the news was.
Do you recall the day your service ended?
My 3 years? Well, I was in Fort Riley, Kansas then. And they wanted to know if I wanted to re-enlist. I said, well, are you going to send me to a helicopter outfit? Well, you got to go back to Vietnam. I says, forget it. They says, well, I guess you're over with. And I checked out the forms they gave me, I think, for all my stuff I had to account for and things, and hopped in my car. I left.
Wow. Just that quick.
But they sent me back from Nam in February of 69. And then I went to Fort Riley, Kansas. What'd they put me in? A confinement center. I said, this is a prison. They said, yeah, for all the guys that go AWOL. But we want you to sit here and type up dossiers or whatever it is on them, each one of them. I said, I don't know how to type. The captain that was running was a real jerk. He got shot in the back a couple times in Nam. So you can imagine he's an idiot. And he didn't like me because I didn't like him. So one day he caught me sitting, I was bored. So I was typing because I knew how to type from high school and everything. So then I got stuck doing it the rest of the time I was there. And I tried to get back in a chopper unit. And the only thing they had was a SkyTrain unit that was going back to Nam. So like I told them, I'm not going back. I'm just going to leave.
So I wanted to work in the United States.
Yeah. In the same way in our detachment and company there, what'd they have? They had civilians working on the choppers again. And these guys thought they were really hot shots, like gunslingers. They all had 45s on them and had all the gear like they're in a movie or something. And they would get permission to have them flown down to Saigon every weekend, go party and bring back beer for themselves and this and that. I remember first time they got shelled south in the Towel Headland.
How were you treated when you came home?
Like shit. We were all treated bad. They hated us. I didn't want to tell anybody where I was at. I went in a bar one day in my local area and I let it slip where I come from. They threw me out of the bar. They didn't want my kind in there because You know, you heard the old stories, you baby killers, you civilian killers, and this and that, warmongers. That ain't how it was. They don't know any of that stuff, but still, that hurt. And really, since I've been going to the VA hospital, I've been getting over a lot of that frustration and that prejudice about that. And it really did hurt. If it wasn't for my meeting my wife, she don't know she helped me out, but she did, being the best friend I ever had, helping me out with all my issues and stuff.
Yeah, good to have good people in your life like that. Did you meet her when you came back?
Yes.
Okay.
I met her because when I got back, first place I went was to see my old girlfriend, and she says, I didn't want to send you this letter because you might stay for another tour, but we're done. So I went to a party one night and met my wife, which is the best thing ever happened.
And your wife's name?
Jill.
All right. So tell us a little bit about your post-theater experience. So you met your wife. Did you go to school or immediately go in the workforce, or?
Well, my job was promised from Western Electric if I came back.
Okay.
So I thought it was kind of a joke that nobody gives you something like that. So after I spent all the money I saved up in Nam, on her and goofing off and everything, I said, well, it's time. I guess I gotta go to work. So I went ahead and called them, and they said, sure, come on down next Monday. When do you want to start work? I says, well, not for another week. And I was quite surprised that they offered my job back just like that. And I worked for them, hired on again, and worked for them for 36 years and 4 months until they downsized me. It was a good career. The Army was a lot of people say it's bad. I think it was a very good experience for me. And it should be a good experience. Basically, it's what you want to make it. And I enjoyed every bit of it, really. Sure, there's good and bad times, but for the most part, I enjoyed it. It was a good experience, and I'm happy I got the opportunity to do it. I worked for Western Electric, which turned into AT&T, which they split us off to Lucent Technologies, which then they merged with Alcatel. Now it's merged with Nokia, so it's called Nokia, Alcatel, Lucent.
Oh, wow. That's a mouthful. And retired now?
Yep, they forced me to retire.
Okay.
I had 36 years and 4 months. I wanted to put 40 in, but they wouldn't see it. And I probably could have. What's sad about it is Western Electric was one of the biggest and best companies in the world as far as manufacturing of telecommunications equipment and installing it in central offices and stuff like that for the phone companies. Well, after AT&T, they got so much mismanagement up high. One of them was who got Carly, the one that was running for president, they hired her as CEO, and she got $20 million bonus every year for about 5 years, and all she did was cut the company constantly. Every Thursday, we had to be at our phone, see who was getting downsized. This went on for several years. She sold all our assets. She got rid of everything we had, and I got a gigantic Lucent flag. I put on my flagpole the other day, and I took a picture of the retirees and says, okay, I want to look at this every day, and it reminds me of the fact we were one of the best companies, biggest and best companies in our field in the country. And it only took a matter of a couple of years for mismanagement and poor management, including the CEOs and board of directors, totally ruin us. Our stock was well over $150 a share, and it dropped below 99 cents a share.
Wow.
A lot of us were in our 401ks with these companies, and I know some of my friends that I worked with lost over $1 million in stock. I mean, I lost a lot of money, and it's taken me 15 years to get back up partly of what I lost.
Wow.
But after that, after they downsized me, I felt bad about that too, because you think, oh, you're worthless. They don't need us no more. Well, I got over that pretty quick. I worked as a maintenance man for a while. Then the wife, she drove a school bus all her life. So she taught me into driving for the local school district up there. They got me my CDL license and everything.
Okay.
So while I'm driving for them part-time, they wanted me to be full-time. So I took that. Then they wanted me to cut all the grass, grounds maintenance and stuff. So I did that. I'm doing all this. Then they wanted me to take a lot of trips with the buses, and I did that. The last thing they wanted me to do was be the bus mechanic. I says, I never worked on a damn bus. They said, well, somebody told them I worked on a helicopter. So I said, well, that don't have a big yellow on it either. It's different. Yeah. Well, I did that for a few years until they played their politics game and they didn't want me in there no more. And they wanted somebody else in that spot, a relative. So I went to work for another school district, and that was one of the best school bus driving jobs I drove. My last job was I was driving a handicap bus with handicapped kids on it, and those are the greatest kids in the world. I told him, since I can't drive no more, I lost my job and everything. So I told him, I says, you know, I don't miss driving, but I do miss those kids. They were so much fun to mess with. They love people to give them trouble,
Right.
because they are disabled and they get treated different. I just treat them the same as everybody else, and we all just had fun. But they're great kids. But that was a darn good job.
Do you have children of your own?
2 girls. One is 38, I think, and the other one's 41.
Okay. And their names?
The oldest one is April, who's same last name, and no, she changed her name. It's Mahalski. You want me to spell that?
That's okay.
Okay, and the other one is Tara, with the same last name as us. She's living with us now because she had some unfortunate things happen and she's wouldn't have had a place to live.
Did you join any veterans organizations?
No, I didn't.
And none? Okay.
The VFW, this is confusing. I don't know what they were talking about. I was trying to get my disability on my hands and stuff fixed up, and they told me I had to talk to the VFW or DAV or something. I said, well, how are they included? And they said, well, they're supposed to talk to you when you got out of the military. I said, nobody talked to us. They just said leave. So I'm confused on that. You know, I'm still trying to get that figured out with them.
Absolutely. Any injuries from the war or?
Yeah, my hands were my fingers from here on down, both hands were completely crushed. When they pulled them out, they were only about that thick, yeah. All my fingers.
When you were working on the
aircraft maintenance stand collapsed, and my hands were caught in between the 2 tubes. And it took about, a couple months to get that all back to normal and everything. I get a disability for that. Just 2 fingers out of 8. Figured that out. But I thought everybody says, you need to go sign up for VA healthcare. This was about in 2009, I think it was. I never even considered it because I've been healthy all my life and everything. So I thought, well, I'll just go up there and talk to him when they came to Montgomery City. And the guy was very nice who signed me up and everything. And he says, he asked about disabilities. I said, I ain't here for no disability. I ain't got no disability. He says, well, you got any injuries? And I told him, he says, yeah, you got a disability. He said, first thing is, all you guys get tested for Agent Orange. I said, well, I don't know if I got that crap, you know. I've been around it, but I don't think I was exposed to it. Well, he said, you were there, you were supposedly maybe exposed to it. We flew through it a lot because I was a gunner for a while, volunteered to be a gunner, and I realized that's getting kind of dangerous. So I didn't do that no more, but we flew through all that crap that they sprayed, they said. But I've never had any symptoms, and none of my friends had either that I know of.
That's good.
But I signed up, and he got me signed up for the disability. And next thing I know, they sent me to all these experts to be tested and found out my fingers were messed up, and I got bad arthritis in them now. But then after my stroke, I went back to the VA, and they gave me these brand new hearing aids. I asked the girl, I says, how much these things cost? She said, they cost $1,000. I said, I can't believe they would pay that much money for me. She said, well, why not? I said, well, we don't deserve that. She says, you deserve it like everybody else. I said, no, we never felt like we deserved anything. She says, you know who we have trouble with is the younger guys from the last wars. She said, they come in and they say, you owe me this. We deserve this. She says, in your era, none of you guys ever come in saying you're being owed this. And I am very grateful to the VA for everything they've done for me. They had me in rehab, and I've talked to the psychiatrist a little. Not that I'm nuts, but, you know, they just wanted to talk to me. But you hear all the bad things about the VA, and I'm sure there's some places that are bad, but this place in Columbia is the best place in the world. I've been to the one in St. Louis numerous times. I'll never go back to that place. But here, I'm sorry, I'm messing with this. But the one in Columbia here, everybody treats you great.
Good to hear. So how do you feel like the service impacted your life?
It taught you responsibility, for one thing, and for your actions. If you don't do it, you're going to pay one way or another. You know, it may be your life, it may be something else. But and a lot of younger kids today need to have something like that. I hate to see people drafted or anything, but there needs to be some kind of program to entice them to come in and learn a little responsibility.
Right.
And if you go to right service, you can travel and see things too. And a lot of people don't understand how there's another world out there besides your local town. Right. You know, I talk to the kids in my little towns up there, and I tell them, you need to get out of this town, go to a big city, or enlist in something where you can travel a lot. Once you leave here, you don't want to come back because there's nothing here for you. Go where you can see things and see other people, what they do. You'll learn a lot. And a lot of them also, I want to enlist to be a artillery. And I try to talk them out of that. like I said before, you need to, if you're going to join a service, think about what you want to do in life later on and have them help pay for getting you started on that. That's one thing. I always wanted to work on airplanes and helicopters, but after I got out, I didn't have any money to continue my education on that because you got to have a license for everything. So I really feel bad now that I didn't pursue it. Instead, I went ahead and got married, which took all my money then.
You mentioned talking to younger kids back home. Where's home now?
Well, we live between Montgomery City and Wellsville. And see, since I drove a school bus for both places, I'd talk to these kids and stuff, and, wherever they talk about wanting to join the military and things. And then I'd tell them where I was from, and they look at you like, what's that for? They don't teach them any of this stuff no more. They don't, unless you watch it on TV, they don't know what it is. And like we were there, you didn't know what was going on in the United States a lot. I've seen it 3 times now, this documentary on PBS about the last days of Saigon. And there's a lot of things, every time I watch it, I learn something new about what went on those last few months of Saigon and how it just aggravates me, the fact that our government's still doing it to all these, like Afghanistan, Iraq. They promise these people that work for us, we'll take care of you. And then we pull our ass out and leave them there. And they go to prison or get killed. And we just did a dirty deal on these people in Vietnam. I have nothing against the people, and I also feel like we were lied to, like always. Better fight for democracy. If these countries want democracy, they will try their best to get it. All we're doing is going there and fighting for the big politicians and big business in this country to make more money at the expense of our poor people that have to go. And the worst thing is the people in these countries suffer the most. I'd really like to go back someday and see the place. I mean, it is pretty.
Yeah, I've heard that. Beautiful country and kind people. Did you experience
everybody was friendly, but that could have been because they like our American dollar too. But we never had no trouble with the people. Of course, they had spies everywhere. They were always walking around our airfield. You could see them walking off paces, looking around and trying to get bearings so they go back and tell people where to put the rockets and stuff like that to get the coordinates.
What would you like to tell future generations about your experience in Vietnam?
Well, it was quite an experience. I learned how bad our people are in the United States as far as how they treated us like crap. There's no reason for people to be like that. They always want to put the blame on the wrong people. It wasn't the guys that were involved in the conflicts that are the bad people. It's the people that initiated these conflicts. It's all politics. It's all big business. Don't trust them at one bit. Come up and tell you, well, we're going there to fight for democracy and all this kind of stuff. It's a flat out lie. As far as I'm concerned, I don't believe anything they tell me anymore. I have very low trust for the government. And it all started after I got back from Nam because of the way they just kept crapping on us. Well, the same way with, we'll take care of you after you get back. I don't think, well, except for this Columbia VA, which they've been more than willing to help me out. I don't think that, well, while you're in the VA, you talk to these guys from other wars and stuff, and you read some of the information that's coming out that a lot of us don't know about. I've learned more from one man in that VA hospital who's worked with me and talked to me about how they're trying to cheat the guys on retirement now. They're trying to make the guys pay for everything. I know some guys that are enlisted now have to pay their health insurance. They have to pay for one or two meals a day, plus other things they make them pay for. They keep telling you that, we'll take care of you on the schooling and stuff. There's so many stipulations in that. You got to read all that fine print, and it's not as good as they say it is. You got to enlist for 6 years to get that schooling program. I mean, they deceive you in just be careful what any other future conflicts or wars, be careful of what you're signing up for because they deceive you in every way they can, and you're the one that's going to lose. I'm talking politics, ain't I?
It's your interview. It's okay. Anything else that you wanted to share with us today, Larry?
Well, like I said, everybody badmouths the VA, but I think they're great. They've been more than willing to help me with all my problems, whether service connected or not. They've been willing to help me. A little funny thing is, I was in the nursing home rehab up there 3 times a day, every day of the week, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. We found I was going there for months, patient, and they did a world of good, those ladies up there at the outpatient therapy. and get me back to working and everything. But I called one day to the VA, they called me, and I asked them, well, how many visits am I allowed to go to a nursing home for therapy? She looked it up and she says, oh, you got 6 visits in 6 months. And they looked it up and they says, holy crap, you've been going for 47 days, three hours a day, you know. But I don't know how anybody could recover with 6 visits in 6 months. I mean, after I had a stroke, they put me in the Rusk Rehab Center for 2.5 weeks. And then they put me up there by my house for 47 days, outpatient. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be as good as I am now.
Wow.
So I appreciate the mistake, but they worked with us and got me working again.
Good to hear.
And we do have a great country if we could ever get some great leadership. That we haven't had in decades.
Well, we appreciate you being here with us today on Memorial Day. Unless there's anything else you want to share.
I can't think of anything at the moment.
All right. Well, thank you for your service, Larry.
Well,
Appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hit the same button over here.
Hi, I'm a spokesperson for World War Heroes Chronicles. Every day we lose more veterans and the stories that shaped our world. Actors and movies aren't the real history. Our mission is to transform raw, aging archives into cinematic documentaries that rival Netflix while keeping the truth alive for future generations. To support the channel, you can become a digital librarian on our Patreon for just $5 a month. Your support directly funds the high-definition restoration of these rare records. In return, you'll get early access to our videos and entry to our research library of original archives and service histories. Help us save the next story at the link below.